Unit 8, Reading 1.
The Industrial Revolution and new technologies brought many changes to the economy. The U.S. also had lots of land and natural resources. For instance, in 1859, oil was first successfully drilled in Pennsylvania, and the modern oil industry began. Steam power became replaced by energy sources like oil products and electricity. Steel railroads grew, and in 1885, the first steel skyscrapers were built, so more iron and coal were needed. Other advances like telegraphs, later telephones, and steamships helped to increase opportunities for business over long distances. Many of these new industries were run by giant corporations and monopolies called trusts. The billionaire owners of these businesses were sometimes admired as captains of industry, or they were scorned with the name robber barons. At the time, they were among the richest men in the world. Andrew Carnegie owned U.S. Steel. John Rockefeller owned Standard Oil. Cornelius Vanderbilt owned several railroads. J.P. Morgan owned a giant bank. Their businesses often grew by buying rivals or by agreeing to keep prices and profits high. Meanwhile, pay for workers was low and labor conditions were often bad. In 1900, an average factory worker only earned $9 by working 59 hours a week. Workers organized unions to demand higher pay, better labor conditions, and 8 hours of work per day. However, large companies could hire private armies to fight unions or use cheap immigrant labor to end strikes. In 1892, a U.S. steel strike in the town of Homestead, Pennsylvania, was violently attacked by 300 hired guards. 20 people were killed. In 1894, a national railroad strike stopped many trains to protest a reduction in pay. Army soldiers and police were called to help restart the trains. 30 people died in fighting. Farmers on the Great Plains unsuccessfully tried to start a new political party to regulate the high prices of railroads and reform the banking and currency systems. The public also began to demand that the government do more to regulate businesses, break up monopolies, and increase taxes on the rich. Some writers and journalists reported dramatic stories about dangerous living conditions and corrupt politicians. For instance, The Jungle was a famous novel written by a socialist author named Upton Sinclair. Sinclair's book described the dirty and unhealthy conditions in meat factories. Readers were angered by the idea of eating dangerous food. Meat sales soon fell. Before 1900, many people believed that the government should not regulate the economy because it would interfere with private business. But around this time, a political movement called the Progressives grew. Progressives believed that government should do more to fix problems in society. Theodore Teddy Roosevelt was a progressive who became president after the previous president, William McKinley, was shot in 1901. President Roosevelt supported laws to reduce the power of business, break up trusts, and start government health inspection of meat and medicine. In 1912, President Woodrow Wilson was elected. He came from a different political party, but he continued and strengthened some of Roosevelt's regulations for businesses. Big banks and monopolies could now be regulated, split up, and carefully watched. In 1913, the Constitution was changed so that income could be taxed. This meant wealthy people would need to pay more taxes. Despite these reforms, money from wealthy donors was still important for the expensive election and re-election campaigns of politicians.